Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Groyper Report. Tonight, we have some groundbreaking news to share with you.
Welcome to the Groyper Report. Introducing the most racist men alive. They are shutting it down as we speak. Welcome to the Groyper Report. Sexist. Racist. Phobic this, phobic that. Terrorizing women across the country. Telling them to wear clothes. Saying all women are mid. Minorities fear them. The president has them on speed dial.
Guess what? Your body, my choice.
Brought to you by Frog Aura Maxing. Brought to you by Frog. Giga Chat Central, yes, thank you for asking. They all must go. Welcome to the one and only. Defending the last white men on Earth. Atlas Thugged and Josh Vandernord. This is the Groyper Report.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Groyper Report. I am your host, Atlas Thugged, aka Aaron Shepard, and we are the one company that is not afraid to say Christ is King. We have a big show in store for you guys today. Quite honestly, this is probably the first time I have been nervous in doing a recording for a YouTube stream in quite some time. Many of those familiar with me probably know I'm not too shy about what I say on camera, but today was a bit different, and that is because we are building a new coalition. We are calling it the New American Vision. And going alongside that is going to be one of our featured shows, and that will be the Groyper Report. Now, not with me is actually Josh Vandernord. He will be a regular co-host on this. He's going to be joining me every single Saturday from 8 to 10 p.m. That is currently how we have it planned and scheduled to go. I do appreciate everybody for being here. And already, I got to say, funny enough, I added the shutting it down aspect to the show, and no joke, my YouTube studio on the back end has broken. So I cannot see any data right now. So it is a blessing that I have it pulled up on my phone right now. So we will see how much YouTube prefers this type of content. And that's kind of the direction it's going to be going. And I would imagine many of what is actually said from this stream actually will ultimately be what me and Zeb are going to argue about on Crash Out Corner. No, just kidding. That's for another day, and that's for a joke for a later time. So we have a lot going on. Josh Vandernord will be joining me closer to 8:30. We will get into that. But the idea here is we are going to do a week in review. A lot of the content around Nick, a lot of the dialogue in between Nick and his A-loggers and his defectors, if you will. And we kind of had a dialogue between myself, Josh, Zeb Boykin, and maybe John a little bit. But it basically was the idea behind it is there's clearly a growing faction of people who are maybe disturbed, unsure of the direction Nick has been going, maybe can't digest down the higher IQ takes if we want to be a bit more abrasive with that. And that's kind of the goal here, is to open up a platform for all of these A-loggers, right? I am a loyal Groyper, so is Josh Vandernord as well, and we will take on any and all defectors, dissenters, and hopefully we will explain things in a way that you retarded folks at home can understand. Now, that's kind of the idea here with it as well. We're going to be a bit more provocative. Now, edginess can be taken so far until it's actually kind of cringe, and that'll actually be a topic of the show as we'll get into it. But I think it would make sense if we actually explored the first topic that would be meaningful. And the first topic actually is on Monday, or what was supposed to be happening on Tuesday. Now, many people actually got excited because what they saw was a potential debate between Nick Fuentes and Tim Pool. And that was because Timcast News had actually posted and published a little itinerary from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and all of the guests they were going to have on. And it turns out he's not going to be coming on. Now, the reasoning seemed to be unclear, and people were confused by it, who canceled on who. And it does appear to be that Nick Fuentes was the one who had to reschedule. And he did address it later on in his show. I believe the words of choice or the excuse that was given was the fact that he had something going on that he had been planning for quite some time. And the way he kind of worded it and went about it made me think that it was more than likely about a personal, like a family commitment, whether it was going to some friend's wedding that maybe isn't in the public sphere, but he's friends with close at home. But what we got from that actually was kind of surprising. And the beef really didn't actually stick between Nick and Tim because it was kind of cordial between the two. The beef came from what we are getting with Netter. And what is Netter, you ask? Netter is no enemies to the right. Now, that is where I and Matt Walsh and many actual conservatives are at, right? The idea, the shorthand idea is we need to stop punching to the right and be concerned with the enemies trying to kill us on the left. And what has been born from this is a lot of these group chat leaks and what seemingly is a development that we're getting close, or maybe censorship is going to be tried in some of these departments. But to zoom back on the actual beef that happened between not Tim Pool and not Nick Fuentes was actually people attacking Tim Pool. Now, what you actually got from this was one of the more notable ones was Sour Patch Lids. Now, if anybody's not familiar with Sour Patch Lids, she was a former producer and was actually on the show sometimes on Timcast IRL. She quote tweeted this Timcast news schedule and basically made some sly point about, why you shouldn't platform Nazis. And that was kind of the common theme that we saw through many of these posts, was everyone wanting to attack Tim Pool for platforming Nick Fuentes. But it wasn't coming from the left. This was coming from the right. This was coming from individuals like Sour Patch Liz, former producer, now in this nebulous space of a conservative, which we'll get into that, being, attacked and smeared by people who fall into the camp of Dana Luesh, Seth Dillon, Abby Libby, I believe is her name, and many of these gatekeepers, if you will. Now, what we're going to actually watch, the first thing we're going to watch as we're waiting for Josh to call me and get here to do his job, is going to be actually Tim's response to a lot of this chatter that was going on. Now, if anyone's familiar with Tim Pool, this is not the first time he's actually had Nick Fuentes on, or at least attempted to. And what was curious was the first time this kind of right-wing pushback it didn't exist. It wasn't there. But this time it is. And this is one thing that you will notice, which is when conservatives get power, we seemingly noodle. Our arms turn into noodles. We turn into, armchair quarterbacks. All of a sudden, we have no idea how to wield power. All of a sudden, everybody forgets the enemies that we had simply just conquered in the election that happened in November. And what do we start doing when we start doing these hunt-out campaigns, sniffing out even the slightest bit of non-alignment with where Seth Dillon is in his conservative values? And that, my friends, is unacceptable for a Christian conservative. So this is going to be Tim's response to some of the pushback he was getting with some of his regulars there on the show. Let me go ahead and cue it up here for you guys, but let's go ahead and take a listen to this.
The Fuentes thing is so triggering to so many people on the right.
Well, I think it confirms a lot of people's preconceived notions about getting the phone call and, gatekeeping this show.
No. People on the right are attacking me for booking Nick Fuentes.
Yeah. Platforming, so-called.
Yes.
What do you think of that attack?
You've always had controversial people on. It's not new. Like, I don't know why people are upset.
Well, I don't think
we've had leftists who have advocated child sex changes on the show.
I don't think Tim's introducing the idea of Nick to people. Nick is already mainstream as far as I'm concerned. Right. People are very well aware of who he is, and I don't think Tim would be adding much to that by having him on, if anything.
Yeah. The funny thing is, back in the day, we had been talking with when Cassandra was doing booking about having Nick on, and I was just like, they'll ban the show in 2 seconds. So we need to find it's got to be something particularly news relevant we can have him on for that makes it harder for them to remove. And so that was kind of the idea. And then I guess he got offended by the idea or whatever, because it's like the stupidest thing in the world where it's like, Tim, why don't you burn your show down? Why don't you hey, you should have on someone that YouTube is going to ban your show for. It's like, why? We're trying to have the conversation with Nick. And we're trying to navigate censorship. He, too, is trying to navigate, and we're trying to figure out how to do it. So now YouTube's basically lifted all these restrictions, and now there's nothing to worry about at all. So we were like, yeah, Nick, come on the show whenever you want. We consistently invite crackpot psychopath leftists all the time. Nick is the least of, I would actually argue in terms of opinion, Nick is substantially less controversial than any one of these leftists that's arguing children to have sex changes.
And just like that, that is where the argument is. Now, I believe anybody with a reasonable sense of, or maybe just a healthy dose of paying the F attention would understand everything that Tim is saying. Now, I'm no fan of Tim, but this is actually positive and negative on two ends. This is positive on the ends that the fact of, I'll take the defense. And quite frankly, kind of impressive, the fact that Tim Pool, the moment that YouTube opens the door and says, you know what, we will allow the First Amendment, well, we will begin to partially start allowing the First Amendment, that Tim Pool takes full advantage of that. He goes, you know who would be a good guest on my show? Nick Fuentes. And the reason why I think many people were actually probably more disappointed in the fact that this one did not happen is because there's now a running theme of he's been featured everywhere. We went from no one will have him to everyone will have him. And this kind of development has been shocking and explosive, to say the least. For one, it's kind of scandalous for many people who just are still headline readers who maybe don't have a fuller picture of who Nick Fuentes is. But what was born from this was because it was on the back of his take on Charlie Kirk and who was behind it. And this has continually played into the hands and fed more into the narrative that Nick Fuentes is bought and paid for. And previously, the argument only extended itself to being a federal informant or a federal asset. And now, off the back of what is happening with Charlie Kirk and some of his takes there, it's now extended itself into being controlled opposition, being a foreign asset. He got the call. And when you see compilations like this, that kind of plays up more into it. But the reason why I was excited was because previously, like I had just said, Tim Pool had Nick on before. Now, this didn't last very long, and it was largely more so Kanye and Milo who had talked. I think Nick said maybe 8 words before everybody walked off the show. The idea there would be, more than likely, because they already know each other, Tim Pool's not going to be asking Nick Fuentes, like, what's your origin story? Where did you come from? Who are you, sir? And like, what do you do, right? Like, maybe he would use it as a basic intro, but he is not going to be the individual that is going to sit there and ask him about Cassie Dillon and wonder how he got his start. It would go right into very substantive content. And that's one thing that's been missing from a lot of his interviews, whether it's been Patrick Bet-David or Bradley Martin. And you can go down the line. A lot of them are, what's the right word? Maybe neutral is a good word. Vanilla is maybe a good word as well. Just basic. Weren't very provocative. Whereas me being a lurker, a Groyper for, I'm the October 7th Groyper, actually. I'm the newer Groyper compared to Josh. There have been spaces that Nick has joined and been in for like 10 minutes that were more provocative, that were more substantive than a lot of what these interviews are. Now, part of me is under the mindset and the belief that I do think there is an element that this is kind of like currency to these individuals who say they are First Amendment and they don't fear any kind of debate. They don't fear any question at all. And what they do is they'll have Nick on, but then the conversation will hardly be about what is the most, edgy and provocative things Nick pushes for and what are those ideas. Those aren't what's being tackled a lot of the time. Now, sometimes they are. With Bradley Martin, I think they were explored a bit more, but Bradley was more so inquiring. He wasn't oppositional. And I think that's what people want to see. We don't want to see people being red-pilled for the first time, which that's great. We love that. What we want to see is we want to see Nick actually challenge the juggernauts who are the gatekeepers. Thus why it was such the Yu Yu Hakusho moment of the Charlie Kirk assassination was because that was a debate that we will ultimately never get. And what many people wanted was here was two major, if not the two biggest. Here's the leader of the mainstream right, essentially, for the younger gentleman. And here's the dissident leader for the younger gentleman. And to see them, butt heads and be able to actually debate in a forum would have been a great thing to see. And partly of my belief as well, that the reason it never happened was because Charlie would have taken a lot of heat for it. And he ultimately probably would have been made to look not dumb, but the less conservative, if you will. And there would have been a moment for Nick to kind of springboard himself off of. Now, that moment in itself particularly was also a little annoying, just in the aspect of a lot of people probably were excited for it, myself included. I made a video, and lo and behold, it didn't happen, and so I have to pull it back. Let's go ahead and play the rest of this, actually, because I am curious, and I want to know if he does say anything more so about who is chiding him. So let's take a listen and let's finish this video out.
Yeah, and we've had like 4 or 5 of these leftists on who are like, abortion till 9 months. Like Matt Bender's a good example. He wants abortion till 9 months. And I'm like, has Nick said anything anywhere near extreme is that?
I will say this though, I don't even really know what Nick actually believes, because I feel like every time he says something, it's layered underneath so much irony that like there's no actual real belief or pitch or idea
Yeah,
that changes here.
It changes every month.
And then there's like the way he defends what he says.
I think they pull clips out of context from his show, and his show is watched by he's got a core audience that is not massively mainstream. He's getting a lot more attention as of recent. And because of this, it makes him an easy target for taking clips of him out of context and then installing views for him, which makes it really hard for people to actually know what he thinks. So the presumptions are that he said things that are very offensive. There's a viral video on Instagram where he talks about how nobody wants to live near black people and everyone's afraid to say it. And the funny thing is, he's actually correct.
He is correct. Everybody wants to not live near white people if they have the choice, and everyone, you can see this very clearly if you track it down. Now, while he didn't say too much chiding of where it was coming from, it was clear from some of the X posts. Now, someone didn't put in the outline. But, ladies and gentlemen, I do have Josh Vandernoord waiting in the queue here. Let me go ahead and grab his link, actually. I'm going to pull him into the show, ladies and gentlemen. The co-host, the man of the hour, as long as I can get his link to work, which should be working now. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Josh Vandernoord.
How's it going, guys?
Oh my
Happy to be
gosh.
here.
Let me turn you down a little bit, actually. All right, man. What's going on?
Tone it down.
You said you were driving, right?
Nothing much, dude. Got here a little early. Yeah, driving through Virginia, trying not to get pulled over.
Yeah, definitely.
Am I getting an echo?
A little bit of an echo, actually. Let me try to suppress you down.
Here, how's that?
That's better. That's much better. I'm cleaning up on my end here too. But yeah, we have comments here. It says, looks like you are in a Jewish tunnel. I'm sure, but I miss you though. I was hoping to have all of us here for the launch day, man. But it's exciting, being here in studio. You're going to be the one that ends up hosting it next time around. But let's get right into it, man. What direction do you want to take this? Right, we can review what was the thing that stuck out to you the most this week in terms of all things Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, so I was watching the beginning. Great intro, by the way. I know I've said it to you in person, but I got a glaze here on the channel a little bit. It was awesome. And the Tim Pool stuff, disappointed that Nick didn't end up going on with Tim Pool, but it turned out to be like I was assuming it was going to be like some drama, but it turned out just to be a scheduling error. So I'm excited to kind of get into the meat and bones of today. I would say one of the biggest things that Nick really touched on this week was Israel, which is kind of funny because he's been getting a lot of criticism since Charlie Kirk's death about not like now all of a sudden being pro-Israel, but he really actually was uncovering a lot of nuanced perspective about it. So that was one of my main takeaways from this week.
Yeah, and we can speak more on that, right? They think the new narrative, the direction where it's going is largely looking at, well, twofold. One is the rebranding of the rhetoric of the changing, obviously being very self-aware of how overt and the obvious, very pro-Zionist rhetoric is clearly not gelling with people anymore. So you can see some of the change of what they're doing. And I think Nick kind of touched on that in terms of the photo coming from the clergy with in the church, instead of it being the Western Wall from J.D. Vance. The second element with that is the one that I find to be more embarrassing and humiliating, and I think that should be more talked about in the mainstream, which is the idea that we are basically using 200 U.S. troops from CENTCOM, and we have our top 2 and 3 guys, right, J.D. and Marco Rubio, doing tours in Israel and staying in Israel, because the idea there is if they stay there, their presence will keep Israel as a deterrent to keep them from blowing up children and annihilating this peace deal.
And this isn't even a Nick take, but like that Israel and Gaza, Hamas, they have this ceasefire, and Israel violates it like 89 times in less than a week. And of course, it's so funny that like Nick did say this, and he sums it up perfectly, where it's like Marco Rubio and JD Vance are there to babysit. They are there to make sure that Israel does what we say. And it's like the thing he said that really resonated with me the most on that issue was that JD Vance is there talking about how, oh, we're equals. We're equals with Israel. And it's like, dude, no, we are not. They're a tiny like spit of land in the middle of nowhere, and we have to like come to the table and shake hands like they matter. I mean, Holy Land aside, all of the biblical stuff aside, think about it. Like, think about it if we were saying that about like Tunisia or like the Congo or something. The Congo is bigger than friggin' Israel. It's ridiculous the relationship we have with them, even on face value.
And this is the obvious part, I think, for anybody who pays attention to this stuff like daily, which is you notice when it's like over and over and over. You notice when something's been done like 5 times in a row. And you can even see that just in some of the notes, obviously taken through this week and seeing that. And it's to me, what I don't get is it's clearly they have lost the mainstream dog. So I don't understand why they won't move to a more honest positioning with it. And let's explore this route too, because one of the first thoughts I had when they did this symbolic vote, right? They did this symbolic vote in the supposedly symbolic vote in the Knesset, however you pronounce it, to annex the West Bank. And we end up getting a quote from Marco Rubio, we get one from JD Vance, and we get one from Trump too. But JD Vance was the one that was more scrutinized because he said, I take personal insult to that. And that is the idea that we are basically having to put all of our high brass, every person, all hands on deck for a maximum pressure campaign, not on Venezuela, although that is happening, but a maximum pressure campaign to make sure Israel listens to what we tell them. And that is what is pathetic, is here we are, the U.S. world superpower, basically having to babysit another country when the actual true course of action should be us telling them, do it or get the F out, right? Do it, listen, or else.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm actually like I was fishing for clips for today's stream, and I came across an old Nick clip from like a couple months ago that is so like poignant about the situation where it's like, if you think about it, all of Europe, all of the other countries in the Middle East, and the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, like all these things are basically, and even us, are impotent to tell Israel what to do. The whole world can't tell Israel to stop doing something. What does that tell you about the world? It goes to show that, yes, like, they won, dude. The Jews won. They have conquered the planet, so to speak, and they're freely executing their will. I mean, yeah, it's not absolute. It's not like we're all hail plankton walking around and stuff like that. But we definitely, like, if we, the people, if the stated doctrine of the United States is, basically to create stability in the region, Israel is a direct threat to that.
But this is why the idea of this connection, right? And you bring up the point, right? What does it tell you if the rest of the world seemingly is under some gag order from actually doing anything actionable, against Israel? Where's the sentiment, right? Where's even policy actually? Now we've seen some of this, right, with the recognition of Palestinian statehood from places like France as well, and that seems to be deflections from other pressure campaigns. But your point stands, which is, doesn't that tell you something? If all these other countries also seemingly are held back from doing something, what is the element that holds them all in check? And that goes down to what Nick's kind of whole prominent idea is, which is there is this element of inside of the Jewish identity, the Jewish faith, this in-group, this networking, the diaspora, like House had put up there earlier, this kind of the way that they kind of act as a people almost from birth as intelligence agencies, which is they basically embed themselves into different countries all around the world. And when you do that and elevate in different positions, you have people everywhere. But that means there's something to it, right? Which is there's something to the Jewish identity. And that plays its role into the fact of why so many hide it, why so many claim, being white. And that gets into an issue of the race realism and why it matters. And so many elements you could go from there. But I guess in your words, what would be the most prominent thing we could push from that? What do you think is the most prominent point, or the succinct point, I should say, when you're telling somebody this is why the Jewish identity matters in this conversation? What would you say to that?
This is perfect because, as you know, Atlas, and I say it all the time on all the shows I go on, that like I currently work for a conservative political news talk station, and the host of the show that I produce, he and I have a good relationship and we're friends, but he is a boomer and he can't get past this non-racist mentality. And I'm, like, we're not like actual like hateful racist here, all the stuff that implies, but he basically, when it comes to Israel, he goes, so you have a problem with Zionists, not all Jews. And I go, no, I actually kind of do. And he's like, dude, what's wrong with you? You can't say stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I'm saying it to you. I'm not saying it on the air. And what it is, these people, like you said, Atlas, their culture is they're basically born and they have this like CIA mentality. They're like societal spies. And that's part of their culture because they are like paranoid. And what they tell their kids, we constantly talk about like, how is the black community supposed to heal and move past slavery when the parents are teaching their kids that they're going to be oppressed? Then every bad thing that happens to them is, well, it's because we're oppressed. And the Jews do the same thing. And my boss, he has Jewish partners. He knows Jewish people, and he talks about how they're very paranoid. And it's like, well, that's kind of the point, they may not all like, it's kind of like what George Carlin said, and I think George Carlin is gay, and I hate like people that worship him. But he said when he was talking about like Harvard, like the Skull and Bones conspiracy, he basically said, and if you're talking, I'm sorry, I have to mute so there's no echo. So if you're butting in and I'm just talking over you, I'm sorry. But basically what George Carlin said is you don't need a formal conspiracy when all these people go to the same schools, go to the same churches, eat at the same restaurants, go to the same parties. You don't have to organize and come up with a plan when everyone already believes the same thing. So that is why it is not simply Zionists. And this is evident by maybe you could get away with saying that pre-October 7th. But after October 7th, all the secular Jews, all the religious Jews, all the Jews that make fun of Jews, the so-called self-hating Jews, what did they do? Every single one of them, with like 5 exceptions, came out in support of Israel. And that is the point.
Exactly. It all culminates in an overwhelming like core audience, if you will, of people who will always return to the same well. Like, and it has to be recognized that if they always prioritize this one well over everything else, that clearly means that we are at odds at certain points. And that's kind of the best point about that you bring up there, which is this kind of, these people are held. They are like stuck on this idea of, any amount, like racism, right? The idea of what it is. And people can attach different things to that. But the idea here, as we push here with race realism, is just because I recognize the races are different does not automatically attach itself a belief of or a hatred, right? I go, hey, we're different. That doesn't mean I'm like, wow, I hate you because you're different. It's like, how did we get there, right? I can recognize that a Pomeranian is different from a golden retriever. It doesn't mean I hate either breeds. It's just to recognize the fact that there are clear differences, and those differences mean that they probably need to be treated differently. And it's very easy when you apply this to, say, cows. It's very easy when you apply this to dogs. It's very easy when you apply it to literally any other animal. People go, oh yeah, that makes sense. You wouldn't put, big cows into tiny cages and et cetera. Obviously, it's a poor analogy, but the idea stands, which is these differences are clearly what is underpinning the majority of what we have in terms of just the constant misery, the depressive state, the atomization of the nuclear family, all of these negative downstream consequences from being thrown into the salad bowl of America, if you will, and it being forced upon people is resulting in what is constant violence. And I think for you and I and many people, as they begin to wake up, we recognize and we go, clearly this isn't the answer. Clearly forcing multiple different groups of different cultures into one, and then saying everyone can be whatever they want and no one can answer the question of what even are we, that obviously is going to set up some extreme collapses down the line, one of which we're getting to right now. But also, the issue for us, as you know, I say issue, but you know, Christian nationalists, the idea is we get thrown into the boat with Hermes. We get thrown into the boat with Gypsy Crusader. We get thrown into the boat with Handsome Truth. And that's not to say like these guys are bad all completely, but it's to say like they have a clear, overt intolerance of people of different color. And I would so far as wager, like, yeah, I think Hermes is extremely hateful. That's not to say he doesn't open people's eyes to certain differences. But as Christians, the idea is like to not harbor genuine hatred towards other people. And that's the kind of like the fine line that I think people are struggling with. And when Nick speaks anything to that, they go, wow, he sold out. I should be able to hate people. It's like, no, we're Christian. Remember that.
Yeah, you know, it's actually so funny because I was, you know, like the reason I'm out of town and couldn't be there in person, well, in studio today, is I'm visiting my grandparents and a friend of mine. He's my best friend growing up. He just had a daughter, and I was meeting his new daughter. And
Well, guys, it looks like I lost Josh. He might be coming back. He might be coming back. Give me 1 second. I'll put him back in here. See, out there in the wilderness in the deep south where whites shouldn't even be, they don't have internet connections. I think Josh is using a Tesla tower for Skynet or whatever it is Elon bought. Let's see. Can I get Josh back in here? There we go. All right. As you were saying, brother. Oh, can you hear me? Maybe you can't hear me. Well, wait. He's on air right now. Maybe it's just his connection. All right. I'm unsure. Josh, you should be good, brother. We'll give it a second. If it's too bad, we will give Josh the boot. He can go back to the south with all the black people. All right. It looks like Josh's connection is fading out. I knew it's going to be a little bit difficult. We'll give it one more try. Looks like he did just rejoin. Apologize for making everybody wait. Wanted to make this work. Wanted to make sure the other co-hosts would be here. And okay, it looks like Josh isn't. There we go. Every time I say that, he's just disappearing. Okay, we're going back to the meet cam. We will get Josh in next Saturday, but wanted to make sure we did bring him in, and obviously that was a great moment. If I do see he's got a stable connection, I will go ahead and rope him in again. Oh, we did get him. Yes, I can, brother. No, you're good. I'll go ahead and get it fixed on my end too. But we are getting Josh back. Okay, surprise. Flip flop, flip flop, flip flop. Josh is coming back in. So let me bring this in. I gotta redo the link here, but it takes 2 seconds. Trust me, guys, I'm not Zed Boy, and I know what I'm doing behind the keyboard. Josh should be pulling up on screen any minute now. And there we go. All right, he's back. All right, brother. Let's rehash. What were you going to respond to before, so the audience isn't confused?
okay, yes. So essentially, I was meeting with one of my best friends, and he was talking to me about the show, and he's you know, he was actually expressing concern as a fellow Christian. He was like, Josh, the role you're in, it's like a teacher type role, and Scripture teaches that you know, teachers will be judged more harshly. And he was kind of concerned about the things we say, the things Zeb and I talk about that could be perceived as racist. And I told him, I was like, you look, dude, you know, like I'll be honest, like I definitely take it far at times. I be making racist jokes and stuff, and it's definitely not a proper representation of Christ. But and I definitely am trying to do my best to clean up the language. But you know, I get a little heated at times. Doesn't make it. It's not an excuse though. But to answer the question, I think that it is rather important to note that there is an element of actual hateful racists, and what it is, it's like the fringe movements, no matter what they are, liberal, conservative, Christian, atheist, as long as it's fringe, it attracts antisocial behavior. It attracts antisocial people. And you do see this. Like I've experienced talking with people that are genuine hateful racists. And I definitely like, look, we're all children of God. Nobody's perfect. But I think you're right. I think Hermes, Gypsy Crusader, it's about saying shocking things, and it does like, and saying shocking things is one thing, but when Gypsy Crusader like at all, that's
Hold on a second. Your connection's really, really bad.
I'm not
I'm losing
like
you a little bit.
I'm a race realist. This
Go
is
again
not
now.
like, oh, that's racist. It is genuinely just like we're all human beings here, and I definitely think that's what I appreciate about Nick, is he genuinely seems to want to keep Christ at the center of this thing, and that's why it's important, because so many people are in this because they made racist jokes in high school, and then during the Obama years they couldn't, and now that's like it's about being racist. It's about making these stupid jokes. And it's like, yeah, the jokes are like the icing on top, I guess you could say. But we are in this. You and I, Atlas, Zeb, John, we're in this because we recognize the problems in our country, and we're trying to enact real change.
Agreed. Agreed. And this is, and I'm actually going to swing this over. I know you're driving, so you're not going to be able to have not going to be easy for you to look at this. But I'm going to.
I can see the screen.
Oh, you can? Okay. Well, I want to bring people's attention to this because this actually caught me off guard a little bit, actually. And this is not too long ago, but it wasn't this tweet. It was the one that followed up from Mr. Tyler Russell here that caught me. And if you're not familiar, featured on screen here, this is Future Nation. This is Tyler Russell. This is the original Canada First. He was one of the first ever, I guess you could say, like Nick copycats, if you will, although he does his own stuff now. And he's great content. Follow him at Future Nation on Kick. He's actually quote tweeting Hermes here because this kind of shows the divide between where the America Firsters and the Groypers are versus a lot of the rest of the dissident right. So what he writes here in responding to Hermes is he says, "You don't understand because you're a fucking idiot who got red-pilled yesterday. If you didn't notice, we're trying to effect real change here. And there isn't any room for 90 IQ freaks yelling at black kids on the street corner. You people make whites look like trailer trash. And you only do it to selfishly grift on Twitter.com. And that is a quote of Hermes actually quoting Nick. And his quote is again in response to this beef that was running through this week in regards to Paul Miller, Mr. Gypsy Crusader. And what Hermes had said is he says, I don't understand what Nick means when he says Paul is genuinely intolerant and hateful. I would say right there in the first sentence, Hermes has admitted to you he is retarded. He follows it up and he says, fuck yeah, I'm hateful and intolerant. Am I supposed to be kind and loving to people who are killing, raping, and taking advantage of us? I hate them with a burning passion. Now, I think that by itself kind of shows where this divide is at, because, and I would hearken it back to what Steven Crowder actually said on his barbershop series, and trust me, I don't like Steven Crowder, but I will listen when people make good points. And he kind of talks about this water slide example, where there's these white parents and white kids, and they're making the white kids, oh, get in line, don't cut, we stay in line, you want to follow the spot, get behind people, you go up here, use the guardrail. And what he's explaining is there's this black family who's like, dude, there's no rules. They're cutting people left and right. I mean, hell, the black parents are coming in and pushing the white kids out of the way so their kid can get in a second time. And Crowder was saying, he was like, this stuff's obvious to people now. People know it and see it and feel it, and it happens every single day, whether at Walmart, they're at Kmart, or they're just in the parking lot getting chased by a black man. And the idea there is that the more that this conversation goes and the mainstream kind of pundits are going, what's happening? Racism where? Everyone's the same. We're all equal. There's no differences in culture. You will basically give birth to a generation of racists because there will be a bunch of young white men who aren't going to tolerate being told to not believe their lying eyes.
Yeah, and this is something I think is actually really important about this whole, like the Jewish debate, race realism debate, women, the woman question. What it is there are unpleasant truths in nature. And one of the biggest ones is inequality. Inequality is baked into the cake. It sucks, but it's just a part of reality. And when you try and sugarcoat that, inevitably there is this whiplash reaction. And to your point about, I believe it was, Hermes' tweet, where he's like, yeah, I'm intolerant. Yeah, I'm hateful. This is exactly what I was trying to explain to my buddy is, he's like, this is how it comes across. And I'm like, I understand that. But there is basically there is this like sort of violent whiplash back to like actual racism that is inevitable, because if you're not allowed to talk about this until a family member is raped, or I mean, God forbid, I know somebody whose son was killed in a car accident by a drunk driver, and the drunk driver happened to be an African American man who was in the army, and he basically got let go. And what do you do? Like when it's that happening to you, it's easy to give in to the base nature response, which is anger, which is hatred. And if you don't start to talk about the problem, if you don't start to let a little bit of that pressure loose by just saying, look, here's the problem, let's get to a solution that is beneficial for everybody, it will inevitably spiral out of control.
And I think where I would come in actually should give a bit of a defense, because, and we can actually, I think we actually probably should watch this clip to bring it to people's attention here. And this is the Paul Miller one from when he talked about Gypsy Crusader. It's more specifically, I think the reason why I think Nick is actually kind of not tuning him out, but not giving any credibility, is because on the back end of that, on the back end of the provocative nature, on the back end of being super edgy and hateful and intolerant, for one, is already just terrible optics, and it is very, very, it makes it very difficult to pursue real strategic objectives when you're still held back by the fact that the average person is dumb. They are retarded. But I think it's more so brought to a full circle when he talks about the violent aspect, because Paul Miller, like a lot of people, are pushing the idea that there is no political solution. And they're not pushing it in terms of like, vote harder. They're pushing it in terms of like, there's no point, and almost like give up, right? But what does that lead to, right? Well, the natural consequence of that is that's violence, anarchy, no rules, and just people just doing whatever they want because they believe they were oppressed in some way, doing egregious things. He says it perfectly. Nick says, well, then which teenager is going to fire the first shot? Which kid's going to ruin his life because he decided he listened to Gypsy Crusader and today was the day, right? And this is the kind of stuff we don't want happening. We don't want violent rhetoric. We don't want people to do violent things. We don't want people we want people to get hurt or harmed, I should say, but we do want to win. And winning does require a little bit of this bittersweet, like just having to suck it up, right? Which is cleaning yourself up a little bit, not making as many, edgy and racist jokes as you would like to. And as evidenced by the group chat leaks by both Gavin Wax and then the ones that were also leaked to Politico of Paul and Gracia, is that you have people in the right wing who will actively destroy and burn your entire career in life because they too want to maintain this level of power. And they themselves are really the first ones that if you cross over that line and start damaging to optics, they will cut you off, they will kill you, and they will dangle you in front of your enemies. So if you wanted to speak a little bit to the group chat leak that happened, I believe, on Monday and Tuesday, what were your thoughts on that?
You're referring to the Gavin Wax group chat leaks?
Yeah, because there was the two of them. There was the ones that Gavin Wax basically orchestrated himself with the Young Republicans, and then there was the second leak, which I'm unsure who actually turned over the documents to Politico, but of Paul and Gracia, which was the guy who said he had a Nazi streak in him and has now lost the Republican votes for his Senate confirmation.
Yeah, so here's my opinion on that, which is this is actually, if you guys watching this watched our debut episode of the New American Vision Founders podcast with Atlas, myself, Seb Boykin, and John Ward, we basically were talking about the New American Vision, the kind of changes that we want to see, and really it was like a starter episode, but this topic specifically, and maybe it's something I focus on because I work with Zeb directly. He and I see each other basically every day. So it's in my mind a lot because this is something he and I disagree on. I'm sure Atlas and I are probably in the same camp, but it's how do I put this? The way I see it is I do not agree with Paul Miller. I do not agree that like the only way out is through some sort of like violent demonstration in the streets. I do not believe that. If I believed that, then why wouldn't people be doing it? Or why wouldn't I be doing it? But I don't. And here's what I think is there's a lot of confusion about what Nick means when he says we need to get into what he people always say, oh, Nick wants us to infiltrate. It's really not about that. It's about becoming powerful. That's what I would say, because I brought up the example on Outside the Overton of Owen Schroyer. I forget the guy's name, but there's this lawyer who is basically pro bono defending Owen Schroyer. And if this, like, imagine if we had 10 of these guys that's willing to go pro bono, or 100, you know what I mean? It's become useful. It's not so much about like, we're going to sneak in and like go Emperor Palpatine on their ass. It's not like that. It's going to take time. It's going to take focus. It's going to take great effort. And history moves on. People want the change, whether it's positive or negative, to happen right now. They want to see something change right now, even if it's for the worse. And here's my problem with that is history moves on. The Jews won. Jewish people have won. They have completely taken control of the American system. But history goes on. We're still alive. We're still here to notice and to resist. So we have to be tactful. And what does this have to do with the group chats? I would say this. The group chats are clearly what we're seeing is we're in a middle ground where 10 years ago nobody was a noticer. Nobody would even talk about Jewish power. Nowadays, it is mainstream and it's like a popular topic. Like liberals and conservatives believe in like Jewish overrepresentation and power. Everyone's waking up to it, but we're still in this point where things like this, little like getting ooh, I'm going to tell on you like because you said the N-word in a group chat. The people, like all the Obama people, they're still in there. And so people are talking about this group chat leak like it's, oh my gosh, this is like a way the wind is blowing marker that shows this doesn't work or that doesn't work. It's a drop in the bucket. And honestly, like I personally, Atlas, I want to get your opinion, because my opinion is it's not a big deal. And this does not prove anyone's point about infiltration, because eventually, like saying the N-word in a group chat won't matter.
So my opinion on it is I'm actually closer to Nick, and I'll explain to you why. So when I had the discussion with PineSap, for example, the big thing from him was even he kind of got, he got the lashing, if you will, right? Not to make fun of him at all. But, basically Nick kind of went on a little tangent of like why he thought the way PineSap had approached that debate on Jubilee was wrong. And I think that in the same element is kind of the same reason why the group chats also are maybe less so, but are still in that same category, which is the idea if your actual goal really is to take it as far as you possibly can, and say you want to be president one day, well, I mean, you have to know who your enemies are. And your enemies are both left and right. Your enemies will try to absolutely assassinate your character over the words you have said, even if they destroy the context. And that's because, again, you can't control the stupidest people in the room. You just simply can't. And the more and more that society kind of continues and cascades, really, with the average IQ falling by the day, the more I think we have to actually play ball with those barriers. And that is to say, like, I get comments all the time from my own content, and it's like, if the person would have listened for 30 seconds, their comment is immediately made non-existent. It's like I would be disproved in 30 seconds, but it's to say that there's too many headline consumers for us to make these minimal mistakes, because all the average person needs to see is just what that Politico headline was with Paul Ingrassia. He had a mean Nazi streak in him. And that's to say the burden of having to convince or convey to somebody the idea of like why women shouldn't dominate men in the household is already one that we're having a hard time selling to pastors who are the people who are ordained to teach this in the first place. So when you take that same kind of element and you go, well, now we got to explain to random strangers on the internet why Nazi jokes aren't bad. It's like, it's just not going to happen. Maybe not even for the next like 5 to 10 years. And that's to say, because the social climate does matter. It does have an actual tangible effect on political conversation. And that would be my response to that.
Yeah, I actually do agree in principle, and I get what you're saying. And this is kind of what I would say, because people think Nick is switching up because he says things are getting serious now and we have to clean up our rhetoric. And essentially, I kind of I agree with that, because I think what the point is this is people we're in this stage right now where we were verbally and mentally oppressed. Like, you can't say anything negative about a black person whatsoever in any kind of, you would get, like, I remember you would get in trouble if you said black person, and like, people would chimp out over that. And now it's the complete opposite, because there's this pressure release you're seeing. But the thing is this the levels of power, Capitol Hill, Congress, Senate, the White House, there's this idea that, like, okay, everyone of the youth is becoming like they say, we say it kind of tongue in cheek, like racist. They're becoming awake on racial issues, racial like disparities. Like, people are kind of waking up to those things. But there's this idea that, okay, when we're the president, when we're running the show, we're just going to be on Capitol Hill saying the N word and saying, like, the K word about Jews. We're just going to be calling women hoes on Capitol Hill. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think that there is this dignity to the level of power that we aspire to be at, that that we should treat it with dignity. And I think that is ultimately, at the end of the day, better, because when we are sort of beholden to the idea of what, like, we should be, then you're more likely to execute it. Because if we're just going on and say screw the N words, blah blah blah, it actually does, it may not be racist in spirit, but you run the risk of becoming racist, like actually racist. And that's the thing, is it's like people are all the time. And that's a perfect example. If the president of the United States is going out there and saying the N word, and like all black people are dumb and mud huts and stuff, then the whole population is going to follow in suit. And I don't think that's a good thing. Now, with the group chats, I do agree that it wasn't smart. And you can't trust anybody. The point is like, listen, we can say this kind of stuff on the internet and get away with it. But when you're at that level, you still have to kind of be more tactful than that.
And I think this is a great segue into a chat that I tried to find, but I couldn't grab it, from Zeb. And I think that point stands as well, too. And I didn't even notice this when I'd seen the tweet earlier, but it's kind of crazy. It's about Nazi LARPing. So I guess I'll give a short idea, because I don't have the video pulled up directly. Let me see if I can just grab this tweet, put it up on screen. So the tweet is in response here to this Nazi LARPing. So I'm going to put it on screen so you guys can see it as well. And so this is the tweet. It says, black guy Nazi LARPing wearing a swastika has aura, but the blonde-haired, blue-eyed white kid wearing a Nazi Halloween costume is aura-less. Now, on the right-hand side, you see the still frame of a white man in Hugo Boss. I don't know if it's actually Hugo Boss, but he's in a Nazi uniform. On the left-hand side, you can see Kanye West and Nick Fuentes. And the point here is they're trying to make a comparison to a viral moment that happened to this guy on the right. Now, what was this viral moment? Well, it was him trying to get into a bar, basically. I think it was his Halloween costume, and he basically gets chastised out. And it's a raging cow of a woman. She's screaming at him, she's smacking him, she's pushing him out, and he's just joking and laughing. Now, what was born from this wasn't really the beef that's happening here on this tweet. This tweet's to show you that the conversation has now evolved. But the tweet that he had initially had posted, and I think it came from Kaiser Rev, actually, that Zeb Boykin was talking about, and it was a quote of a screen grab of a telegram. And it was Nick basically saying anybody who thinks that the Nazi LARPing is, cool or based or in any sense, has lost the plot, and they're part of the reason why we failed to reach our political objectives. And the point that Zeb had brought up was actually, if you look in the telegram, and yeah, let me see if I can find it on screen, actually. I'll just go ahead and search for it while I'm talking. But if you look for it, and you see the telegram, what you can see is the emoji reactions. And typically what you'll see with these reactions is a lot of fire, a lot of thumbs up, a lot of hearts. This one in particular, no joke, I think he literally was being ratioed by the thumbs downs on this post. And I'll try to find it here and bring it up on screen. Forgive me, I wish I would have had this pulled up. Here it is. Got it on screen right here. This is from Kaiser Rev. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Nazi LARPing is still cringe. But if you notice here in this image, I'll make it a bit bigger. You can see the thumbs up here. Now, obviously, I think if you added these numbers up, the thumbs down would still be less than the rest of these together. But this is to say, I have not seen this before. Now, part of the reason, and Josh, you can back me up here, and I'll give it to you here in just a second. Part of the reason why I was so into and ready to, this show's kind of like me and Josh's baby, and I was ready to dive into it, was because it's clear and obvious there is a growing kind of, mutiny is probably not the right word, but a growing kind of dissatisfaction with a lot of people in Nick's camp and whether it's born out of just confusion, maybe not understanding some of the takes, whether they think it actually is the fact that he is captured, whether it's ideologically or financially. And this has now opened a dialogue where there's clearly conversations happening between Groypers of going like, hey, what's going on here? Like, is there a shift here? Like, it feels like this isn't the same Nick I watched a month and a half ago. What changed? Now, the majority of where me and Josh are coming from and where I still am coming from is I do think that a lot of what you're seeing with this shift is in line with the fact that he is trying to make himself mainstream palatable. Maybe this is himself trying to begin to knock away some of the edgelord stuff to prepare for a presidential run that won't happen until, probably 10 years from now. But a lot of people aren't taking it as that. They're taking it as maybe this is from some self-serving interest. Maybe this is going into, some kind of weird direction, right? The Candace Owens, the Israel stuff with Charlie Kirk. So I'll just kind of leave it off from there, Josh, and I'll turn it over to you, man. Where are you at with this kind of dialogue building in the Groyper camp?
Uh-oh. Did I lose? Hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, sorry. I wasn't sure. It made a noise. So, all right. So to answer the question, I'm kind of curious what you have to say about it too, because my point about this guy wearing the Hugo Boss outfit and doing it is kind of to what I said earlier. Is it's like, okay, we are in this unprecedented time, actually due to nothing we did. The Jews kind of showed their hand. They showed their deck of cards after October 7th. And really that is what is waking people up. How they are treating Gaza, how they are basically whipping our politicians into shape, into suit. That is what is waking people up on Jewish power. And people like Nick that have been around and talking about it, he immediately surges in like mainstreamness and credibility after the fact. However, is Nick's takes, Nick's, opinions and whatnot, they are based in reality. They are based off of documents, evidence, hard facts. And but now people have just switched to Jew, like it's not a bad thing that they've switched to like Jews run everything, but now it has kind of spiraled into this there's a Jew under my bed like type mentality. And yes, I do agree that like there's a time and a place for everything. And the guy walking around in a full-blown Nazi uniform and getting like fat bitches to like yell in his face, it's not funny, first off, and it's not cool, and it's not really what we need right now, because the point is Nick says funny things at times. Obviously, he says the N word. I'm not going to come on here and say Nick Fuentes is the king of optics. Obviously not. But he is tactful. I don't think anyone can argue with that. And the point being is like when you do stuff like this, yes, you discredit the movement. So that's kind of my opinion on that. I want to know what you think about it though.
So at first, I was probably getting ready to. That'd be like my second thing I would actually disagree with Nick on outside of Lord of the Rings. But the because I had actually covered this, right? So here's where I'll come in at this. The reason why I think Nick is actually probably almost overwhelmingly right on this, and maybe this is a controversial take, is because we got the direct example of what is going to be on the other side of that with the guy who was posting all these death threats to Seth Dillon, Laura Loomer, and Josh Hammer. Now, the caveat I would throw in there and the nuance is the one that was published by Seth Dillon, I think does need to be adjudicated under a court of law, and we need to know like what do the courts think of that, because I would wager that the one that was sent to Seth Dillon that he published does not meet the criteria of what would actually meet for a death threat. But supposedly the ones that weren't published are taking the word of Josh Hammer and Laura Loomer, something I wish I didn't have to do, but if we're taking them at their word and they are pressing this case, the idea there is that this guy Klaus, that was his user handle, his handle literally was Zionist or scum, was posting nonstop talking about publicly lynching people, all of this stuff all out in public. And sure, he was maybe like, a shit poster, if you will. But then is a clear and obvious, like, you couldn't make it any easier for someone to take a screen grab of you, put your face up, your mugshot, and go and see what Nick is doing, see what Nick Fuentes is doing to the people in this country. And again, it falls back down to this, like, the lowest hanging fruit. And if, like, and I'm going to be honest, and everyone knows it here too, the majority of people aren't like me and you. The majority of people aren't like the people here in this chat. The majority of people they're not self-initializing, self-actualizing people. They basically are, I don't even know if they have inner monologues. And so if that's what you're competing against, right, you're competing against a mass majority of people who are, for lack of better words, like close to disabled and are retarded, then you have to be able to compete against that. And I think that's where it is. We don't have a mechanism that can compete with the mass media, right, with the mainstream mass media narrative. And that's not just Fox and CNN. That's now extending itself to Emily Austin. It's extending itself to Laura Loomer, Josh Hammer, and it goes on and on. The point there, though, is that I do think that we know what's happened in the past. And I think the fear is what happens when the censorship that's receded in the last couple of months. Should we take it for granted? I don't know if we should. It's only been happening. It's only been around for since X was taken over and on YouTube much more recently than that. And so I think we would be foolish to take full advantage of that, go 110%, only to be back where we were in 2017. And that's kind of my take on it. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah. So, I get what you're saying. Maybe I missed the broader point. Do you like the Hugo Boss Halloween costume or not?
Oh, do I like the Hugo Boss costume? No, I don't. And the reason, and here I'll tell you why, because I'm a father with children. The reason why is because if I was to do that, say I was to dress up in this, I've basically now painted a target over my wife and my daughter. Right. And so, like, who do you think is easier to attack, me or my wife? And it goes beyond there too, which is like, especially if I do something public like that, right? He probably didn't intend on getting doxxed, but I'm sure people know his name now. I'm sure people know who his mother and father are now. And I'm still under the belief that, yes, we saw what they did after Charlie Kirk was killed. Now, you can argue over whether it was a leftist or not. The point being is the left still celebrated it when it happened. So you know how they feel when they do see someone who they are a political opponent of, perishes. And so that's where I'm coming from, which is, why would I add extra things to take shots from when I could do the same thing and not be attacked, right? Like the point being is, like, you can be a Nazi and not wear the uniform. Right? Like, so why go the extra length to make yourself paint a bigger target on your back? Now, I get the more robust argument here would be is like, and I think Michigan Groyper said it there earlier, which is like, well, do we have freedom of speech or not? And we do, but the same way that people talk about the N-word is you don't have, like, you still have freedom of consequence, right? Which is to say, you can probably say the N-word and it's God-given right to, but if you say it near a black person or in a black neighborhood and you're by yourself, what do you think is going to happen? And so some of these things I think are obvious. And that's where I would say, like, the pragmatic nature has to be roped back into a lot of this kind of strategy here, which is there's still a way that you have to implement these things. And you can't always just expect and extrapolate from X that that's how the rest of the world thinks and operates. Because it's still small and minor in comparison to some of these larger social media networks. So no, I am not a fan of the guy wearing the Nazi uniform, but I don't think he deserved what happened to him. I think it's bad. I'm just saying, I think the obvious idea is, what was going to happen to you if you wore that uniform.
Yeah, that's exactly my point too. Which essentially is, it's an unnecessary risk. Like, yeah, things are getting better in that regard, but they're not there yet. And even if they were, like, I'm not a national socialist. I'm not like a I'm not even like one of these, oh, Hitler was like the greatest thing ever. Like, yeah, he's not as bad as they say, and he was a really effective leader, but I'm not like gonna dress up as Hitler and like sing his praises or anything like that to anything beyond what I just said. And there's a point to it. Like, I'll bring it back to, you remember the undercover Groyper incident where I dressed as a Jew. Our chat always talks about I have curly hair, and so I look Jewish. I put a yarmulke on, went to the Charlie Kirk event, and pretended to be Jewish and was like, "Oh, you should debate Nick Fuentes," and like, but I played it so down that literally Jewish people, like, I don't even know if you knew this, Atlas, but a Jewish writer from the Washington Post was trying to figure out who I was to interview me about, like, well, not to, and I don't know if they were trying to interview me, but they were like trying to find out more about me. And I was like, oh shit. But like, they ended up not finding out anything. But that's the point, is it's like, that was like a stunt. And I ended up basically, like, I tricked, like, Nick Fuentes knew it was a joke because I super chatted in and basically told him as much. And Charlie Kirk didn't know it was a joke because I played it so straight. And that's kind of the point, is, yeah, it was a risk, but it was played for a reason. It got us views, got us whatever. What did that guy gain from that? What did that guy gain from going online or going out in public in a Nazi uniform to like a party?
So that's where I was going to actually go to as well. The first thing I want to bring up too, I actually got Zeb actually text me, and it's actually nice that you're somewhere there's lights. I can see your face now. They put this on screen. I shared it. You should be able to see this too, Josh. This is where the current ratio is right now. This was just sent to me from Zeb. This is the opening post where he leads into this Nazi LARPing aspect. But you can see there 1.2 thousand down thumbs, or thumbs down, and so it's about half and half. So I think that's healthy enough to say, here's what I would say with that too. What we have to also keep in mind is this generational run. And I know Zeb hates that, But that is a thing, right? This guy went from just under 100K. I think he was a little like 85,000 is where he was. And then he blows up to just under 500,000. I would wager heavily that this is not a sign of his core audience. That is, or not, that was screenshot. But I would wager that this is not a sign of his core audience being against him, but it's more so the fact of all the people he has begun to rope in over the last few months. And what comes with that, like you guys, I know you guys, I see it in your Discord, dude. Hell, I had to turn your notifications off how many crazies are in your guys' Discord. And in mine, it's the same way, right? It's all of these, like, you know, I say one point they agree with, and then they come in with like, oh no, and here's why I think, you know, forgive me. Here's why I think, you know, Jesus was a Jew and I don't believe in Christianity. And it's like, well, this isn't for you, brother. Like, I don't know how you ended up here. How did you miss me saying Christ is king at like the beginning, middle, and end of the show? That doesn't fly here. And no, there's no argument you can bring that will convince me otherwise. But I would say I think that's where that's coming from, is all of the mainstream exposure has started to rope in the Hermes, the Gypsy Crusaders, and the Handsome Truth types.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point. Is it's a scary thing because we don't, you know, it's like, how do you dissociate from these people? They're gonna lop you in with them no matter what, and those people are gonna be there because about reality is they are in of themselves a pressure release valve for the, you know, the kind of mongoloid. There's the people that see Jewish power and say, how do we fix this? And there's the people that they recognize Jewish power and they go, Hitler time, Nazi time, time for the final solution. Ha ha, dress up as a Nazi and let's take him on a train ride. I you know, do swastikas on synagogues and stuff like that. That only sets us back, idiot. And yeah, that's my point.
No, I get it. Trust me. And let's not spend too much time on this. We have a lot to talk about too in terms of like the American empire as well. And I'm just gonna let you guys know now too, so you're not wondering why I'm looking over my shoulder constantly. There is a potential that woman propaganda will also join us as well. So I'm just keeping my eye out for his text. He was shooting. It was short notice as well, but many of you who maybe didn't see it, but you'll see it in the outro here. I did make an edit on a whim and stayed up till a little past 6 a.m. to make it, and it is catching fire on X right now. Actually, he reposted it. A lot of other people reposted it. So if you've not seen it, it's on my page on X, but you also see it in the outro. With that, though, last thing I'll spend here on this is actually, if you go over here and you look at some of what he ends it here, is exactly what you were saying, right? Would I go out and do that? Would I go out and wear that costume? And the answer is no. But look at this segment here, this paragraph. Nick writes, I think a lot of people are just very childish and like to wear costumes. For them, it scratches an itch. It's no different from nerds that go to conventions and dress up like their favorite characters, or people who wear graphic t-shirts. They become preoccupied with something like Hitler or the Joker, and they develop a longing to wear a costume and play pretend. Like they enjoy that shit. There's a psychology to that. And the thing is I would agree, but I don't think that applies to this guy in particular. Especially because what month is it right now? It's October. What's going on right now? It's Halloween. So I don't think that him wearing it one time at the time that people normally wear costumes is a sign that this guy had any kind of psychology of like needing to scratch an itch, if you will. But clearly that latches on to Gypsy Crusader. What is his normal costume when he's doing his entertainment? He is constantly painting his face being the Joker. He's entering into this kind of like identity. And I do think there's an element to that too, because I think the best question I saw or comment that responded to this was, who were the Nazis LARPing as? And I'm curious what you have to say to that question in particular.
Yeah, so I in turn, like the LARPing thing is just nuts. And what's my thought on that? So basically, this just goes to show how unserious some of these people are. I definitely think that like my whole opinion of Gypsy Crusader changed kind of recently. It was after seeing his reaction to the Myron thing, and like, because I like literally all I've seen is the clips, All I've seen is him going, "Ha, where's your dad?" to like black kids, and even Nick was like, "Oh, being mean to black kids, like, is that good?" And obviously not. But I wasn't that. I'll be honest, like I wasn't that sensitive about it before. I'm not going to pretend like I am now. But like the LARPing thing, that's gotta stop. It does go to show the psychosis. I don't think, like, I agree with you. I don't think that the Nazi uniform guy was like probably psycho. He's doing it to be funny, and he's in a world right now where, yeah, he's probably a little comfortable doing that. Doesn't make it less retarded. But, he's definitely comfortable because of the world's state, like where the opinion of Jews on the world stage basically is right now.
Right. And, the LARPing thing, I think, is going to be a conversation that will, what's the word? Will hang over our heads for the weeks to come. I imagine we'll get more of that. I imagine we'll probably get more of a response from Gypsy Crusader because, again, there's kind of a bit of bad blood in the water there, although they don't directly kind of attack each other. It's a bit of sniping. But let's go to what I think is in the more kind of the mainstream political arena, which is the fact that we are clearly operating a maximum pressure campaign on Venezuela. All appearances, it looks like we are beginning to affect regime change in Venezuela, and it's not even appearances. Forgive me that I said that. We are trying to do that. So not only have we basically kind of pushed all of our naval carriers, well, not all of them, but naval carriers, we've flown bombers over them. We have more naval ships in the area. We put a $50 million bounty on the president of Venezuela's head, Maduro, although it's arguable if he's a president, more so a dictator in a socialist regime. And then after the bounty, when it cleared the bounty wasn't being collected on after a few days, the CIA then, in a very public notification from Donald Trump, was given the lethal authority to begin carrying out lethal operations. And we have some more recent news in terms of some of the deals that was being given out. Maduro even passed over I think it was a 3-year plan of how to step down, but he was going to turn it over to like his second in command, and like that wasn't good enough for them. He also offered a big stake over minerals and oil reserves too. But this question is contrasted, this topic, this event is contrasted with the fact of most people's reactionary idea when they think of America first is no foreign involvement at all. So I'll turn it over to you, Josh, because I'll let you open up on where you think this story is going to go, what you think of Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments on it, and where do you think Nick's head is at on it?
Yeah, so we had talked about this a little bit before. Essentially, this story with Venezuela, I think, is an IQ gate thing, and because that was kind of like, I'll admit to not having as fleshed out of as an opinion as Nick did. And if you're just watching this and don't know what Nick said, Nick basically said that what we have to do is, it's not simply about not being involved in foreign wars. It's not like, okay, we build up a strong southern border, border wall, retreat behind it, and then don't do anything ever again. We should be influential on the world stage, like what China is doing. China is investing in deep sea ports across the world. They're investing in other countries that have a mineral. They're in infrastructure for countries that have minerals that they need, that everyone needs. And that's the kind of stuff we should be doing. The difference is Israel, on like, at least has gotten $250 billion. That doesn't count the foreign aid we give to other countries not to attack them, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, among other factors, and all the money that we've been giving to Ukraine that is essentially like we're just burning because there's no way they're going to win. These are foreign investments that are fruitless. We are not getting a return on investment at all, hardly. But the difference is like, investing in protecting our hemisphere is actually something worth getting involved with. And that's the thing, is when for years you get these political grifters. That's exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene is. She is a grifter. When she hops on the scene and she sees, no foreign money Israel, no foreign money Ukraine, then okay, well, now we're going to war in Venezuela, the no new wars president. Like, I do agree with Nick that this might be something worth involving it. However, and this is where I kind of defer to what Hayden McDougall, Woman Propaganda, said, where he goes, look, I basically just wait to see what Nick says to get my opinion. And I'll admit to, when it came to the Venezuela thing, I am firmly in that camp. I know a little bit about like some of the mineral stuff and who the president is. I know about the regime to a certain extent, but like in terms of how should we do this, the tact behind it, I'll be honest, I defer to Nick on this one.
I guess this is the one where I'm not opposed to what the more robust idea of what it means to be America first as an empire. And I think that's kind of the question here, which is, I mean, America is an empire. Now, normally when I've talked about this previously, it's like the idea of, waking up to the fact that, no, we're not the Jedi, like we're the stormtroopers. We're the guys who are breaking into homes and damaging other people. And that's how you should look at it in terms of the Middle East, right? That this kind of involvement for seemingly no reason and for false pretenses on top of that as well. But the part where I had kind of got into the story where I started paying attention to actually wasn't even Venezuela. It was the Argentina bailout. And they both actually matter in this because both are in the Southern American in hemispheres, the South American hemisphere, I should say. And we're basically giving $40 billion, I think $20 billion guaranteed, with no way of Argentina really going to be paying them back. And what precluded that is Argentina's economy was beginning to tank. But the idea there of why it's happening, and to make a long story short, is we're basically incentivizing countries that do what we want, Argentina, and disincentivizing countries that don't do what we want, Venezuela. And the idea here is, as Marjorie Taylor Greene had put it, I can't remember who she was talking to, but the idea that America first only ever can mean that we never have any kind of geopolitical involvement at all, I think is also kind of, again, not pragmatic, right? We are in a very globalistic society. Hell, for most of the guys who can't get a date, it's because dating has been globalized. It's been basically passed off to late stage capitalism. And now you got to compete with athletes in your area, right? Who enjoys that. But the bigger point here is, and I think Nick's point, which is to be America first in this perspective, if you do know that China is buying farmland, is making themselves the number 2 trade partner in the entire region, and at the same time, Russia's beginning to do things as well in terms of its contracts and its dealings with Venezuela and trying to put a foothold closer to where we are, places that can touch us, then I would say, yes, there's a much stronger argument for the people who are, you could throw a rock from Cuba to Florida. That is more important to be concerned about in terms of your positioning as the world power. And I think that argument, the extension from that argument then there too is being the world power, is that synonymous with America first, or are they two different ideas?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with the American Global Empire thing. This is how I get into arguments with my boss all the time about the Constitution, and we always talk about like, oh, the Constitution, we gotta preserve the Constitution. It's like the Constitution is outdated, and the truth is that America has outgrown what the founders expected. We're no longer 13 colonies on the East Coast. We became a global empire. We were the relative global superpower. And the thing is when that was the case, things were good. We should be the global empire. We should be the basically, like what's that like cartoon movie by the South Park guys, like America World Police or something like that. Like we should. People say world police like it's a bad thing. I think we should be the world police. But the thing is what does that actually mean? Does it mean, okay, here's a satellite state in the Middle East that is intentionally sabotaging diplomacy and picking fights with all the neighbors that would kick its ass without our help? Is that a America First policy? Or is investing in a country that has a bunch of rare earth minerals that are essential for all the systems that we rely on today but because it's a foreign country and it's not within the continental United States, is therefore it not America first? Obviously not.
I am actually going to disagree with you. I don't think we should be the world police at all. My caveat to that would be, I think we should be the police of our sphere of influence, which would involve the Southern Americas, right? The countries that are bordering us, right? Canada basically is a satellite state of, Europe or whatever. They almost don't even matter. They're basically the United States. They just have a lot of Indians there. And in the Southern hemispheres, it matters too. And it matters because in the sense of also with oil and mineral reserves and all the things that actually matter for why we're not independent. And that's the part of the reason why I do support a bit of the American empire stance, is because of the fact of how many things we just don't make in this country. So say we do what Marjorie Taylor Greene wants, right? Say if I could drop a hammer right now and it would eliminate all exports and imports and we just kind of went back to being isolationist, I don't know how many people would die, but it would be a lot. A lot of people would die because we would not be able to begin building some of the manufacturing for things like, category across the board, like with certain things like food, over-the-counter medication is like one of the biggest ones, but we just simply can't, and we're not in a position to do so. In time, though, I agree if that's what Zeb is referring to there in the chat. In time, I would agree, though. And that's the pragmatic element, which is do we have time, right? Do we have time on our side? And I think the answer is no. I think China and Russia have clearly been making moves. And so I hope that the extent of this is that we don't actually have to put boots on the ground. Because I would still try to want to make sure we did not have to make American soldiers die for Venezuela. Even if it's not Israel, right? I don't think Americans should be dying for any other country. And I think also, too, the part that really bothers me as well is the fact of the $20 billion of U.S. taxpayers going straight to Argentina, and there's no return on that. And hell, it could be a complete loss. Argentina could continue to tank. And there's also another element in there too. I'll just highlight it for people who want to know. There's an odd connection between Scott Bessent and a billionaire who actually used to work for the Open Society Foundation together. They were both employees of George Soros. And when you read into the article, it almost seems like Scott Bessent was helping this billionaire because this billionaire had so much of his stake in Argentina's economy. And he was going to lose a lot of his investment if Argentina started to tank. But moving away from that, though, I'm hoping that this pressure campaign is just that. I'm hoping that that's kind of where it ends at. Now, the issue I have, and I think we talked about this on the call, is the fact that why just won't we be honest about it? And I think that's what we need to actually have the conversation is like, well, if we are going to be the American empire, let's at least be honest about what our intentions are and like what we're doing. Obviously not to publicly put out anything that would be in terms of national security, right? Here's our 10-point plan of like, beating China and we're going to post it on Facebook. It's like, obviously no, but at least being more open to the idea of what is the direction of this country? What is the deep state's kind of end goal? But at the same time, though, you can't have a war on 9 fronts. I think that's evidenced by Israel, right? You can't fight every person and then expect to win. So we can't be having people you can't be babysitting a Middle East contract negotiation between 2 entities that we shouldn't even be involved with. You can't also be funneling money into Europe and then waiting on the shoe to drop between Ukraine and Russia, which is looking like it's actually getting closer to more kinetic warfare by the day. Then now we have Venezuela going on. Now there's 3 fronts, and those are all foreign. We haven't even begun to open up the domestic fronts that we're having battles in terms of propaganda, overall just degeneracy. And that's where I think the argument would be, I would be more okay with the American empire, Venezuela regime change to get minerals flowing back into the U.S. to get a more economic, bonus to what we need to get from our allies. If we also weren't helping Israel bomb children, if we also weren't keeping this war going in Ukraine and Russia, right? Being privy to that and a party to that. So I'm curious what your response would be to that.
Yeah. I do in essence agree, because what I mean when I say America should be the world police, I mean like not today. I mean like in 100 years when we've taken over and our descendants, we're going to be building Death Stars. We're going to be parking Star Destroyers on top of other countries, and the turbo lasers are going to keep them in check. That's what I want us to be eventually. But my point being is like, when it comes to the specifics, when it comes to the minutia of like how to handle Israel, I'm not saying Trump's handling it well. In fact, I don't think he really even is. But I do agree with Nick that it's like, I'm not a isolationist. I don't think we should just throw our hands up and say, well, whatever happens to everybody else. We should be competing with China. We should try to basically mend. I'm of the mind we should try and patch things up with Russia, but I just don't think that's possible with everything going on right now. What I would, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Atlas. This is what I think would be ideal, and I don't know what it would look like, but to have basically a political revolution where the reins of power are so it's not this subtle overtaking over time, which I know sounds contradictory to what I said earlier, but it's really not. Just hear me out. Where you do get people that are influential, and they basically overturn what's going on. Like, let me just say this. Like, hypothetically, let's say instead of JD Vance, the vice president was actually somebody based. I don't know who, but it was someone who gets it. And then Donald Trump, that person runs in 2028. They succeed, and they basically flip the script, and they're putting the army in the streets. And a black person starts mouthing off or singing in public, and they're getting billy clubbed in the mouth, and their teeth are going to be all over the street. And it is basically the whole thing we're used to. Crime is ended overnight. Martial law, I was talking about this with Zeb, where it's like 10 years where it's like maximal punishment. If you get caught stealing a Snickers bar and you're over the age of like 17, you're getting your hand chopped off. Like stuff like that. And we do that domestically, and it sends a signal to the rest of the planet that we're not screwing around anymore. So then when we park our aircraft carriers on their doorstep, they're going to capitulate much easier. But I also believe in being somewhat benevolent, like consolidate our power and use the money wisely. Invest in a country that, like if they're resisting us militarily, threaten them. If they're just kind of apprehensive, buy their trust.
Right. And I think the part that just bothers a lot of people, and here's kind of the way I would explain it too, like you can't play with if you're playing a game of chess, for one, you can't play with pieces that aren't on the board. And two, it is also kind of hard to play the game when the person actually playing the game of chess is being rotated out every 4 years. And that's where I would kind of come into this idea, like, do I like that it feels like, this regime change? Do I like it? No, I don't like it on its surface. I think that ultimately a lot of that money would be better served actually being allocated to the things it needs to be allocated. But at the end of that, though, is in the geopolitical kind of play, would it actually be better for Americans if, say, China does become the global power in 10 years or 15 years? Or if they do enough that, say, they don't become the global power, but say they eat into our kind of market enough that we're not the number one power, and say it's just kind of amalgamous. It's like we just aren't number one anymore. Those are the things that I have a hard time going, where do you draw the line? Like, when is it going to be okay to do any kind of expansion? When is it okay to basically tell socialist regimes to get put up or shut up, right? And it's a question of morality, obviously. But I think the reason why I have a kind of a bitter taste in my mouth about it is a lot of these things didn't have to happen, but they're happening because of all of the evil people who lived or were in office previously. And it's like, well, here we are. And that's what being pragmatic means. Is like, we have to deal and do with what we have in front of us. And that's to say, it's not fun, it's not looking good, but we have to make do with what we do have. And I think in that argument is where I would go. If we can see a lot more overt evidence, in which I think Nick did a great job of showcasing, that China is posing an extreme threat here, then I would say, yes, okay, let's get what we need from Venezuela. I would really hope we could do it without Maduro being actually assassinated and that being put up by the American government. But at the same time, let's pull everybody out of Israel and let's pull everybody out of Ukraine. And let's actually have a concerted effort towards America and not the more kind of catch-all term of like what it means to be the world police. And I'll throw it back to you, Josh.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I'm kind of being hyperbolic. I think this is I'm kind of contradicting myself because I was like, okay, don't dress up as Nazis, but at the same time I'm using the term world police because it's like the thing everyone's afraid to say. I know it's kind of like outdated now, but yeah, like definitely I agree with the sentiment, which is we need to consolidate power. We do need to recognize that we are losing our grip on the world. We are losing our power over the world to China. And that is the battlefront we need to focus on. And that's why like the Israel stuff is so crazy. It's like they're not actually that important.
To which, yeah. Yes. So we do have woman propaganda actually just joined us a second ago. He's not on screen and his audio is not coming through. So I'm gonna bring him over. Josh, if you want to take over for a second, that way I can get woman propaganda all set up.
Yeah, sure, man. So yeah, I think I actually don't think Atlas and I disagree very much. We kind of like I brought up the term world police, and now we're getting into a semantic thing. The truth is like I want to see America be made great again. And what that means, it means more than, okay, I don't want to be harassed by black people. It also means I want like the America, it's not just the continental United States. I want America to be great everywhere. I want us to rule over the world. I like people, like I'm not a globalist, but like I basically do want countries to kind of like whenever they make a decision, they got to say, what would America say? What would America do if I did this? That's what I want. I want Russia to think that. I want China to think that. And China's right. I think Xi Jinping said America is a failing empire. And pretending that we're not is like what we said earlier. When we're not allowed to just be honest and directly address the problems we're facing, then it just gets worse. So we need to say, look, we can't fight for Taiwan, Ukraine, Israel, and Venezuela all at the same time. If I had to pick, I'd say Venezuela because they're in our backyard. Taiwan, like honestly, I think Taiwan is a bigger deal than Ukraine or Israel, but that hasn't broken out yet, and God forbid it does.
You have
But
it all
yeah, I
set up,
think
brother.
that's kind of the American empire stance that Nick was talking about. I think.
Right. No, definitely. And thank you for taking over for that for a little bit. I had to make sure I could get the scene up. I don't know
All
if
good.
you are going to be able to hear woman propaganda actually. I don't know if I had that set up correctly, but we do have
I
woman
heard him.
propaganda. Oh, you did hear him? You guys can hear each other?
I hear him. Yeah. What's up,
Okay,
Dougler? How you doing,
perfect.
buddy?
Okay, we're all in here.
Come through soon.
I know. I actually was just in your neck of the woods. My sister got engaged. I wanted to reach out, but I was just so swamped. What's up, buddy?
Nice, man. I'm just hanging out, man, working all the time. Just shot episode 9 of the Woman Propaganda Show, censored TV exclusive show. I say the N word with a hard R, unbleeped on this show. So, you gotta go behind the paywall for the hard R unbleeped. But
Gotta go behind the
I
paywall.
swear by that compound censored membership. I got it to listen to
yes.
Anthony Cumia and Gavin McInnes, and
But
then when
use
I
my
heard one,
promo code though. If you're not using my promo code, go into settings and erase the other person's promo code and use promo code Patriot. Please.
okay,
Perfect.
I'll definitely
Please.
promo code Patriot. I will do that for sure. And I've been
Thank
checking
you.
out your show. I'm loving what I'm seeing, dude.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. We put some effort into it. It's a fun show. Sorry, what I know that I was in the text conversation earlier, but what is this? Is this stream on Twitter or is it the Groyper report? Is this
Yeah.
plan?
So we are streaming to YouTube. The goal is actually, this is like actually one show that's going to be housed under one channel called New American Vision. This is we founded it between me, Zeb, who you're familiar with. I know you guys saw each other there in South Carolina. Josh Vandernoord, who you're on the call with, as well as John Ward. And kind of the idea is we're going to compete with the Daily Wire. We're going to compete with all the people who refuse to say Christ is king and speak up for white people and all of their ills. And basically, we're here to do everything that every other news organization isn't. And it's going to be provocative, edgy. And I do appreciate you coming on. This is our first time talking. I'm a big fan of your content, man. I know that we kind of got acquainted with each other a little bit because I made the edit of you this morning. But no, happy to have you on, man.
Awesome, dude. I reposted that on Instagram. I appreciate it. I love that. Is that like the intro for the Groyper report or
It's the outro, actually. We're going to be doing it for the outro.
Perfect, dude. That got me hyped. That was perfect. That was awesome. Like the what's it called? Film noir style a little bit. Is that the right word?
Yeah, a little bit of noir. It's I like to use a lot of the chromatic blur, which is like the makes you look like the red and the green, kind of like the TikTok edits. You know what it looks like? It's kind of getting glitched out a little bit. But no, man, it's awesome, and I'm glad we brought you in here because it's actually a perfect kind of segment. The majority of what we have talked about today is kind of this aspect that ropes in the racist side of the crowd, right? Which is people like Hermes, people like Gypsy Crusader, and this kind of ongoing dispute now between the Groypers and more of the dissident right, which is how concerned should we be about optics? Now, for someone like yourself and someone like me and Josh, we can be a bit more edgy because it's kind of our wheelhouse. We're doing entertainment, right? In politics and news. So I'm curious, where do you fall on this kind of discussion? Like how racist is acceptable racism? I guess is a better way to say that.
I put myself in the Groyper camp for sure. I hail Nick Fuentes, nigga. You can say nigga on YouTube, but yeah, what I say is I'm racist, but I'm not a hater. Like I love everyone. I wish everybody well. I want the best for everyone, and I really do. But I am racist. Like black people and white people are different, and right now black people are totally out of control, and they're destroying this country, and they hate white people, and that's unacceptable. And it's not fair that we have to share a country with these people. So I'm like extremely racist, but it was interesting because I collabed with Gypsy and I love Paul Miller. But that guy's like, he's a different type of, I say I'm racist, but I'm not a hater. Gypsy Crusader is more like, I'm racist and I hate you. Fuck you. Like he's actually, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but, yeah, I would
that's what we were.
I like Gypsy. I consider him like a friend, but I would agree with Nick that like, what are we gonna do? A violent revolution? Like, what are you like? No, like I think we can take the country back in a political way. I've never liked the whole there's no voting solution. There's no way to vote our way out of it. I don't like when people say that because I think we just need to get a candidate that actually represents us. The voting's less of a problem. It's more the fact that like we can't get a fucking candidate that has our backs. Everyone just gets in there and shills for Israel. Like I don't imagine we really just need to get a guy in there that doesn't hate white people. We only get politicians that hate white people. So anyways, I forget what the original question was, but I'm racist, but I'm not a hater, and I would side with Nick on. And then I don't know, I'll listen to Nick have these beefs, and I'm low key worried he would is gonna disavow me one of these days. But I consider myself like an entertainer, so I think I get a little bit of a pass. Because you can always just write me off as like, oh, well, he's just being funny, if that makes sense, you know?
Well, the thing is it's kind of like an evolving conversation because now it's going from racism to just like overall optics. And I'm sure you
Mm.
followed with like the group chat story, right? The group leak, and now all these people losing jobs. And the biggest part
Yeah.
with that I think to be noticed is the fact that the right wing is basically working with the left to ensure these people lose their jobs. And now you're having like Dana Loesch go on with Seth Dillon,
Well,
and they're trying to define what is a conservative, and they're Jewish and a woman, and it's like, hold on,
yeah.
like,
It's like, well, you're not the one who gets to decide what a conservative is,
right,
buddy.
exactly, because
Uh,
conservative in this country means Christian. And what this in this
Dude,
new one happened like an hour
yeah.
or two ago, where this guy wore a Nazi outfit to I think a bar, and I think this
Yeah.
massive cow is like hitting him and like yelling at him. So he eventually walks away. But now Nick had a post in his Telegram that he's kind of being ratioed for. It's kind of even now, where he says that this Nazi LARPing is essentially a sickness. Like people who do this kind of stuff probably have some kind of psychological issue. Like they have an itch they need to scratch. They need to be edgy. And I think with that though, Josh asked me the question, would I wear that suit? And I said no. Like, and I have kids and I have a wife. So to me, it's like if I wear that, people know who I am. It's like it's not just me who will be targeted for that. They're not going to
Well,
go after
if
me
yeah,
either.
if you're like, is that kid rich? Like, does he work for himself? Like, what? How
Right.
is it that he doesn't care? I actually could go do something like that for Halloween, and like, I can't get fired. So, like, I could do that and possibly get away with it with no consequences. It's like because people are being more anti-Semitic online, you might feel more comfortable to do that, but the Jews still own our country. Like, there's actually is going to be consequences, like you're going to lose your job, get kicked out of school, or whatever. So I totally agree with Nick. I understand what he means in discouraging Groypers to go do something like that because it can ruin your life, just like for an edgy joke. I did think that was the video was funny. Like I thought it was like I don't know. I liked the video. I thought it was awesome, but I wouldn't. I would never encourage someone to do what that guy did. And to say the guy is kind of crazy and needs to scratch an itch or be edgy, he's probably a young man, high testosterone, has a chip on his shoulder. I kind of get that might be true. Yeah, that I get that.
Right. Well, it's like if you do
I'm
it,
an edge lord too. I mean, I kind of feel that way. I kind of feel that way too. But I agree with Nick on optics too, though. Like part of why I wear the suit in all these videos is because I'm gonna yell some really crazy things in my Instagram reel. So I want to wear this suit and a tie so that I can seem like more normal, or
professional.
just so like you don't write me off as like a total freak.
Right.
Because like, oh, he's got a suit on and he's well groomed. Let's hear what this guy has to say.
And it works.
Well, yeah, and
And
I
it
think it's
works.
clear. It's clear that like what you're doing is different. Like you and Paul Miller could get away with that because you guys are entertainers, and in a certain
Yeah,
regard.
and again, I wouldn't recommend people do what I do. I'm doing something very specific, and it's very easy to do it wrong. Like if I was doing this, like it's very easy to not do this, to do this in a non-optical way, if that makes sense. It's the operation I'm running. I kind of don't. I wouldn't necessarily encourage other people to do what I'm doing because it's easy to like ruin your life and get in trouble, and it's easy to
Right.
just like if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to make content. I was making content for other people for 4 years before I ever put my own face in a video, so I already knew the content game. I already knew how to go viral.
Right.
um
Well, and one thing I would add on there too, in that same element, like I've I have had some of the worst, well, not to get too deep into it, but like family issues, right? Like even doing what I do causes issues in my family, right? My wife's having to constantly answer for when her family sees a video of mine, they're like, what does he mean by this? Like they're making her like have to disavow me, and that causes problems. Not everybody is built for it. And to go one step further, and not a-logging Nick on this, but I love the Lord of the Rings. But in that though, I think the element of the Lord of the
Me
Rings
too.
is with Boromir, and he says, "I would follow you to the ends of this earth," something to that effect to Aragorn before he passes. And that's like the fealty that doesn't exist among men anymore, right? There's no honor on this level. There's no honor for men to go, that guy's good enough to be a leader. I'll follow him where he goes. And that's essentially what the Groypers are. That's why they're very unique. This very intense loyalty to a guy who clearly comes in and is very consistent. And I think that is kind of underpinning where we are right now, which is from the Charlie Kirk assassination, it seems all of a sudden like he changed. For a lot of people, it feels like he's changed. And then amidst this like generational rise, he's also getting a lot of people who only heard of him 2 months ago. So to think that like a lot of this kind of pushback is representative of his core audience, I think is, you can't make that argument because his audience is now 4 times the size of what it was 3 months ago. So
that's like what happened with Zeb is when he went viral for the Charlie Kirk ballistics video, then people started tuning into Outside the Overton, and they're like, wait a minute, y'all are racist? You know, like, and then all those like not half, but a bunch. We just started basically losing subscribers every show because they came for like, oh, the jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams type stuff.
Oh, you don't love Israel?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's unfortunate though. That's kind of like what happens with it. I experienced it myself because I dared to cover Candace Owens, and it's the same thing. I got a lot of people from Nick, and then because I covered Candace for one video, it's like, well, and they immediately fall off the wagon. But we are kind of getting to short. We only have about 10 minutes left on the program. I want to turn over to Woman Propaganda. What have you been up to, man? I know you recently signed on with Compound Censored. I've seen a lot of your content flowing through Myron Gaines. What projects are you working on? What can we expect to see coming from you?
I'm putting out the Instagram videos every day. And then I got a YouTube channel, and then I do this once a week show for Compound Censored. The next big project I got dropping is this Discord. I'm thinking it's going to be I get probably 60 to 100 DMs a day between Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but it's mostly Instagram and Facebook. I get more DMs than I can possibly read. I don't even check my DMs at this point. And people are sending me videos wanting me to react to things. So the idea with the Discord is you can pay for the Discord, and in the Discord, I'll actually respond to you, or I'll watch your video submission, and maybe I'll use it. So we're kind of like, I have all these people that want to talk to me. So the idea with the Discord, because I'm broke, like I still have not really, I get all these views, but I have not for the most part not cashed out in any way. So this Discord we want to do, I think, is going to be like our first like real payday. And for the most part, we're just selling the fact that like you'll be able to hang out with me and talk to me inside the Discord. Maybe I'll stream myself playing Fortnite or something in the Discord.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then and then we have other longer term things. But my next big thing is this Discord, and we think we'll be able to make some good money with that, and just connect with create some like I got all these super fans. I got this loyal base. I got these guys that comment on every single video I post, on Instagram. So gonna kind of create my own type of cult here. I'm gonna have to make some rules like no Fed posting and no posting swastikas in the Discord.
You have to.
So that I don't lose. Yeah, as much as we want, no one wants to post a swastika more than me, I promise. But for the sake of not getting the Discord banned, I'm gonna have to set up some sort of rule like that. So that's the main thing I'm trying to get up right now is this Discord, and then yeah, and then besides that, I'm just doing content every day.
Well, that's awesome to hear, though. I hope you do get the pay date soon enough. I kind of had the same realization as you a couple months ago, because I started my channel started taking off, and you begin to realize like how many views you actually do need to actually release, make good money on YouTube. So I started thinking of other things as well. And it's kind of sad too, because Ian Carroll kind of experienced the same thing. Like the guy was pulling in like billions of views on TikTok and was like living out of his car doing Uber for like the entire time he was doing that. Like, and it's like this was like working.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
And it's rough too, because I was in that same spot, and I kind of get where Ian Carroll was at with that, because when I was doing Uber in the city I was from, it made me racist. That's what red pilled me faster than doing literally anything else on this planet, was having to go to fast food restaurants in the middle of the city at busy times with a bunch of non-Americans. I immediately, I was red pilled faster than anything I could have seen on October 7th. Immediately, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm born and raised in San Diego, California, and when I was 23, I moved to South Carolina and lived around black people for the first time ever, and that made me super racist. And then I became even more racist in 2022. I lived in St. Petersburg, Florida for a year, had black neighbors, lived next to the ghetto, heard gunshots every other night. Black men walking down the sidewalk, smoking a joint in front of like children, walking through the park, smoking a joint in front of children, and littering. I don't hear people talk about this as much, but black people just fucking littering, just throwing their trash on the ground, just like on the side on the sidewalk, like no big deal. I saw that in St. I don't see that in South Carolina. I saw that in St. Petersburg, Florida. Just all done with my drink,
Oh,
throw it on someone's
Yep.
lawn, no big deal. What the fuck is that about?
dude, you see
So,
it. You see it everywhere in Florence. And I was telling
man,
Atlas before that, like, I want to see the police. I want to turn the police into teeth collectors. I want them to go out instead of a quota on parking tickets. I want them a
yeah,
quota on molars. Like, they need the billy clubs back. They need to start
yeah.
cracking people in the mouth over stealing 17 cents.
Yeah, that black man that just threw his trash on someone's front lawn, beat him up. Beat him. And so he'll never do it again. And that'll send an example. Hey, we actually don't tolerate that here. Don't fucking dump your trash on someone else's lawn for no reason, just
Well,
because you're a lazy retard.
this is kind
You
of my
know?
argument with that too, which is like, yeah, I can't stand that stuff either. I can't stand when the Ultima's flying down the shoulder. But the crazy thing is
Yeah.
that the longer I lived in the city, the more I realized like the cops weren't even in the bad part. They weren't even.
No,
It's like there's having
no.
gangbanging
And that's
activity
why I
on the
hate
front
cops.
door.
That
Right.
cops are here to harass white people. Cops are here to give bullshit speeding tickets to white people. They don't do their actual job. Without black people, we wouldn't even need cops at all. The only argument for cops is the fact that we share this country with black people, okay? So we have these cops to deal with that, but they're not doing that. They do anything but their actual job. A cop's
Right.
actual job is to deal with black people, and they're not doing it, dude. I do
Yeah.
not like cops. I am so done with cops.
Same.
And
Thanks
on the
for
off chance they drag a black
$700 speed.
person, on the off
Sorry.
chance they drag a black person before a judge, that the judge is black and they're going to let him go.
Yeah,
True.
dude, it's bullshit. This country hates white people, and the cops, that bleeds into the police force as well. I mean, cops not doing their jobs, I kind of get it. If they go do their job, if they do their real job, they're one, putting themselves in danger because the actual job is dangerous. And then two, if they like arrest the guy, like actually get him in front of the job, guy just gets let off. And then also, if the cop does the real job, like they can get in trouble. Oh, you beat up a black criminal? Yeah, you're going to prison, cop. Like,
Right.
they get the Derek Chauvin treatment, basically.
Well,
So cops have been totally cucked. I don't recommend anyone become a cop. Like,
I
it's
agree
a
with that.
lose-lose-lose situation. All
And it's
cops do is lose.
and it was psychological too, right? Because say one of them does decide, that I'm going to actually do the job that people pay me to do, and they go to the black neighborhood and they do something. Well, then next thing you know, this guy's actually going to prison because he dared to be racist.
Yeah.
And it's because, well,
Yeah,
he tried to arrest a black person.
Yeah.
And it's so they're damned if you do, damned if you
Yeah.
don't. So I understand some of the arguments from the policing end, but the idea there should be like, well, just quit, right?
Yeah.
Like just quit then. Like if
Refuse
that's the
to
case,
it's a lose-lose. Don't be a cop. I'd rather just not have the way things are now. I'd rather carry a gun with me everywhere and not have cops. And then I can at least defend myself and not go to prison for defending myself.
agreed.
I think cops are you could say they're useless. I take it further and I say they're worse than useless, because if they weren't around, I could at least defend myself, and if white people are defending themselves, then that might actually curb black crime. I'm getting some static. I don't know if that's on my.
Yeah, it's coming on your end actually. But that's okay because we are actually at the very end of the show anyways. So I wanted to say,
Did we lose him?
no, he's still here. I can see him. He just flipped his camera around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if anything you want to part with, woman propaganda, I'd love to be able to get you on sometime in the future with something more planned, something less last minute. But anything you got to say, man, go for it. Oh, we did lose you, brother. We lost you
I
completely.
think we did. Well, I was gonna suggest to him,
We did lose you, man.
woman propaganda is because he's not far from me and Zeb. We'll have to get him on the Groyper report again, and he'll have to come by live in studio. I can have him in studio with me, and we'll run it from there.
Yeah, that's part of what we do need to actually get up and have. But I do apologize, Mr. Woman Propaganda, because looks like it's just audio just cut out. I'm sorry about that. But once Josh can actually host us from your guys' studio to be able to run a lot more efficient and won't need to have so many different web sockets going in and out. But I did want to say, though, I'll bring it back up to me. Thank you very much for everybody who was here for the launch episode. I do apologize that Woman Propaganda basically is being cucked out of saying his final words, but I don't know what to do with the bad connection. Appreciate it very much, guys. Expect more content like this. Expect even deeper conversations. Expect even deeper dives to be going on in terms of that. And obviously, clearly, as many people in the chat are irritated, obviously this is the direction it's going to go. This is the dialogue we're going to cover. This is what the conversation needs to be. Not conversations being had by Dana Loesch and Seth Dillon about why Jews need more protected. The conversation needs to be about how close are we to actually experiencing some extreme level of violent anything in this country. And that's obviously not going to be an enjoyable conversation to have. Any last words, Josh, before I go ahead and sign off?
I'll be like I was because I'm kind of remote this around. I thought it was actually a tremendous debut episode. I was only going to join for like 20-30 minutes, but we ended up doing the whole show, and I thought it turned out really good. So I'm excited to kind of get to business as usual. I appreciate anyone in here that watched the Joshua Vandernoord show. And tune in tomorrow for the NAV Founders Show. I don't know if that's not the official name, but that's just what I've been referring to it as. And I am super excited to see where this thing goes, especially for next week, because I know we've already talked about next week a little bit. Get some of the old clips I've saved over the years, like screen recordings I have of Nick, that they're like some of the famous clips you've definitely seen, but also some of the ones that kind of slipped past the goal line before he became mainstream. So tune in next week for sure. It's going to be good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And appreciate everybody for being here as well. Obviously, thank you, Josh, for the beautiful sign off. And one thing I'm going to actually address, because that's actually what this show is about. We're going to go here to Michigan Groyper. Let me pull his chat up here. He says, Zeb, we need to cover the Constitution ASAP. And that is because Michigan Groyper put in here about a bajillion chats about, do we even know what the Second Amendment is? And I think, let me just be honest with you. Do you think the government's going to honor your right to attack them? Are you going to be the first one? Do you have plans? Where are we meeting at? How are you collectivizing? Are you going to do email addresses? Are you going to get phone numbers? I'm not saying that to be rude by any means. I'm saying that we obviously feel the frustrations as well. I'm not ignorant of the aspect that violent revolution is definitely dangling somewhere, but how close to that I really don't know, and we should avoid it at all costs. The point being, though, is where do you go from there that doesn't automatically throw people in prison and make it even worse for everyone else who's not in prison? I obviously understand the frustrations. I do think that we are dangerously close to having to challenge something like that. The idea, though, is if we all sit here and start talking about it very openly and explicitly on a platform, we're all going to get canned, we're going to get RICO'd, and me and Zeb will be high-fiving each other in the same bunk there in Quantico as they investigate us for the 25th time over anti-Semitism. But with that, I do appreciate it. This is a great opening episode. I will see you guys next week on Saturday. Also expect the Founder Show tomorrow on Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. You can also catch Offensively Accurate whenever I decide to go live, basically is how I've been doing it. But I do appreciate you guys greatly, and I will see you guys next week. Take care.
Where do you stand politically? Give us your political ideology.
Okay, I can say anything I want.
Yeah, bro. Say yeah. Yeah.
Rumble. I don't know, the day-to-day stuff, I'm like, yeah, more bullshit. Another white girl got stabbed to death? Of course she did. What do you expect? For my politics, I just watch America First with Nick Fuentes.
Okay.
I consider myself a Groyper.
sometimes I just wait to hear Nick's take to make sure I have the right take before I make videos, you know? So, yeah, I just go with what Nick says. I just defer all my political opinions to Nick Fuentes at this point. I'm America first. I wish that we had white Christian men running the country. It's unbelievable to me that we have a government that has a policy other than America first. How does that make any sense? We pay taxes, like, use our taxes to benefit the country that we live in.